because 90% of my clients have always been for the US, a couple in Europe, but mostly all of them in the US. I was like, huh. And then I started looking at the pricing in the US versus what realistically made sense for me to live off in South Africa. And I was like, oh, I can undercut these people by a lot. I mean,
It's called price arbitrage.
there we go. That's a nice bougie word for it. There we go. Price arbitrage. I learned something new today.
Welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicholas Kuhner. Now, I might have been feeling slightly homesick. It's not the only reason why I asked Carol to come onto the show, but we've got Carol Kabaale, who is a Meta-certified ad strategist who helps online business coaches. So you just focus on online business coaches, not just everyone.
No, coaches. Those are
just
coaches.
Like so what I love is people who specialize in things. So I'm going to read that part again because that's really important. Because I was just thinking, okay, Facebook, Instagram, a lot of people do that. But Carol focuses on helping business coaches grow their impact through purpose-driven Facebook ad campaigns. She specializes in attracting high-quality leads and drives measurable results. She's passionate about sharing actionable strategies that empower coaches to elevate their online presence and boost revenue. So, Carol, I've also seen your website, and it's a pretty cool website. You've got such lovely photos there. It's very well branded. So, as a brand guy, I'm like, wow, this person knows something about branding. So, Carol, welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for that compliment on my website. It was a labor of love. It is not still complete. I always think of a website as a museum. We're constantly adding new rooms, new exhibitions, but I am really happy to receive that feedback. Thank you.
I do. Yeah, getting good feedback is nice. And you're very right when it comes to websites. They are always changing. And especially as a business owner, because you've got new ideas and you've got new offerings, it's always updating and being upgraded, which is cool. But let's go into some of the fundamentals of what you do. So we chatted a little bit before this, and you specialize in Meta, basically, right?
Correct.
So talk to me about what your offering is, and let's talk about how you got into focusing in your niche, which is helping business coaches grow their impact online.
So a little bit about what I do is I help business coaches kind of amplify their messages. I like to work with purpose-driven business coaches. So maybe if you're a little woo, if you're a little spiritual, if you don't have something tangible that people can get out of, then I'm really your girl to try and get your messaging out there in front of people, right? Because a lot of people want ROI, they want tangible things. But I know that people who are purpose-driven, they do the inner work. We can't always see those shifts and changes. So that's the niche I fell into. You could say I'm a little woo, a little spiritual myself, but I don't let it define me. I just one day decided, who are the people who make me feel like, oh, yeah, I get to see that person in the morning. And it always ended up being that kind of business coach. It always tended to be that type of coach. And everybody else made me go, oh gosh, I have a call with that person again. And I was just like, no, thank you. We need to stop having that. And that's sort of how I picked my niche and how I got into this lovely role of owning an agency is I had a very traditional life. My parents were immigrants. They came to South Africa, did everything right, went to school, went to university, got a job. After I got that job, I hated the job. Loved the people though. I was in Cape Town, so I couldn't complain. It was lovely times. I just hated my job. Oh my gosh. I worked in corporate, in business development, in hospitality, and I hated it. I was living past everyone because, as you know, when you work in a hotel, you just living past everyone. Everybody's on vacation and you're not. So I decided, what do I love most about this corporate job? And I loved a couple of things. I loved being of service. That's one thing I get to do in my agency now. I get to help people. The next thing is I love the data. I love the forecasting. I love the planning. And things like Meta ads allow you to do that because you take purpose-driven decisions. Yes, the client has an objective, but the data will ultimately decide where you go and the decisions you take. And lastly, I wanted something where hopefully I could have a 9 to 5. It didn't have to be at home, but I just didn't want to be there on Christmas Day or on a Sunday or on a Saturday at the hotel offices. And that's kind of how I decided I was going to go into being a Meta certified person. And that was 8 years ago, and I'm still here. So far, so good.
You joke about a 9 to 5, but you and I both know with our clients not being in our time zone, 9 to 5 doesn't exist. So maybe talk to me about your 9 to 5 is basically 5 to 12.
Well, I think, Nicholas, that is a choice. I personally used to be, like you said, 9 to 6, and I used to, again, work in the same time zone as my clients. But that's where I realized I was making the same mistakes as my corporate job. I was burning out because I was pleasing them. I was like, how can I be of service? And I was too much of service because I was just awake at these odd hours. I was living past my husband and I was sleeping the whole day and then being awake. So again, it wasn't helping anything. I was like, might as well go ask for my job back. And then I discovered, it's not that I can't be of service. It's just that I didn't have boundaries. So I slowly, but I did. I implemented these boundaries and now I have them across all my clients. And I say, hey, I just want to make sure that you understand I'm based in South Africa. The time difference is this. There will be a time where our times overlap, which is usually from like 2 in my afternoon until like, let's say 6 or 7 at night. That time I still maybe will answer a message or like if someone really needs me, we'll hop on a call. But after that, I don't. And I don't hop on weekends. And I've had to do that because if not, then I might as well go get a job. I mean, the pay here is a lot better, but I might as well go get a job because you need to have those boundaries so that you can have that freedom that comes with being an entrepreneur. So yeah, I've definitely told all my clients that. And the people who haven't taken it well were always going to be nightmare clients. So, they slowly had to go.
So on that point, and you make a fantastic point there, which is setting boundaries. How long did it take you to be able to set boundaries for your clients? Because that's something that a more mature marketer or more mature entrepreneur generally does.
I would say the first year and a half, coming on 2 years, I was the most exhausted because I had zero boundaries. I said yes to everything. I was like, even if I didn't know, I was like, yes, yes, yes. I was so scared of failing that I was like, if I just take it on, it'll be fine. Like, I just need to carry on and it'll be fine. And again, I had no boundaries. I had no control. And one day, I woke up. I didn't even know this was possible. I woke up and it said minus $500 PayPal. And I was like, what? Excuse me? What do you mean minus $500? And I was like, what is going on? And it turned out a client I had done all the work for and presented it decided they weren't going to pay me. So they went back to PayPal and they got a full refund without PayPal having any conversation with me at all. And at that moment, I just understood very clearly that I can give everyone as much as I can from me, but you will still get people like this. You will still get people who just don't see your effort, don't see all the extra work and things you're putting in. So at that point, I was like, no, we need to draw boundaries. To round off that story, because I'm sure you're curious, I did get my money back because I did do the work. So there you go. But yeah, it was nice to understand that, like, no, I have to tell people, hey, if I'm really going to give you 100% of my time, I can't help you with that because I really don't know it. And it was a hard pill for me to swallow because I was such a big people pleaser. I always wanted to be of service. I always wanted to help, but I didn't realize that not being able to fully do that thing 100% was actually not being of service to that person.
Well, let's go into the nuts and bolts now. So
Yeah.
there are two things I want to talk about. One is going to be you're in South Africa, but you have international clients. So that's unusual for South African businesses. Number two, I want to go a little bit into Meta and focus, because a lot of companies will say, oh, well, we do everything. We do TikTok, we do Meta, we do Pinterest, we do websites, we do Reddit, we do hundreds of things. So I want to go into how you focused and said, look, I can make a career out of Meta. So let's just start about your process of getting clients that are not South African.
So the first couple ones that I got, I did something very unusual, and I didn't even know I was doing it, that it was unusual at the time, but I did this course um, run by a very famous South African person. I won't name names, but that person, he was offering to teach you to do Facebook ads and Google ads and the whole thing, and you'll end up with this whole business. I was like, okay, cool. At least I'll learn some skills out of it. Very soon, I discovered that not everything that glittered was gold online, and lots of people make lots of promises, and it's not really that. But in that, one of the exercises that we were taught was we need to go to communities and back then Facebook groups were huge. I mean, this was just before COVID. So everybody was like, groups were so hot back then. Everybody was in it, or everybody had a group. People still have groups and want to invite you to their groups. Please don't do that. I don't want to be part of your groups. But anyway, in these groups, people would have opportunities. They'd be like, hey, I'm looking for someone to run ads, or hey, I'm looking for help with social media management. And that's sort of where I learned, like, hey, I can say to someone, hey, I can do that. And that's how I started to pitch my services. I didn't realize it at the time that I was speaking to international clients. I just wanted a client, to be quite honest with you. I was like, can I just get a client? And then when I got on these calls and I realized, oh, all these people are like based in the US, because 90% of my clients have always been for the US, a couple in Europe, but mostly all of them in the US. I was like, huh. And then I started looking at the pricing in the US versus what realistically made sense for me to live off in South Africa. And I was like, oh, I can undercut these people by a lot. I mean,
It's called price arbitrage.
there we go. That's a nice bougie word for it. There we go.
Mhm.
Price arbitrage. I learned something new today. So once I discovered this, I was like, I can still offer a really good service at a very competitive price. And I'm happy with how much I'm making in our currency in rands, and they're happy with what they're getting for me in their currency in dollars. So that's kind of how it happened. And I got my first 5 clients and I did a good job. And from there, I've just had referrals after referrals. That's the main place where my clients come from now. And I'm very blessed that people still think I do good work and want to, refer me to other people.
It's amazing how blessed you are when you do good work.
It sounds simpler said than done, because some people, they just think like, no, we'll just do stuff, and doesn't work like that.
So let's talk about focus on Meta, because
Yeah.
I teach folks how to use Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of these channels, and putting together marketing strategies for how to utilize all of these channels together to promote your business and brand. Why did you focus just on Meta, and what kind of skills have you got that other folks don't have when it comes to Meta?
So I chose Meta because at the time, the course that I did was focused on Google Ads and Meta. And if I'm quite honest with you, Meta was simpler. It just made more sense to me. And also, I found that with digital marketing, as any digital platform evolves, it constantly changes. So I realized very early on, if I'm going to be good at something, I need to only know that thing. I need to know that thing like the back of my hand. I can't be a jack of all trades and a master of none, because then I'm not going to give everything that I can to my clients. I really need to know one thing well. So that's when I decided that Facebook was it for me. And to be honest, I looked at ads as just one component. Ads are just magnifying glasses. They just accelerate whatever you have. So I don't say Google ads don't work, or TikTok doesn't work, or Pinterest doesn't work. All these things have a way. They're just the avenue that drives people to your funnel, to your offer. Now, do I think I can do it really well on Facebook and Instagram? Of course I do. I don't know about Pinterest, but I'm really good at that channel.
Yeah, because one of the challenges folks have is that there are so many channels out there, and a lot of startups will say, okay, we need to be on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, 5 or 6
LinkedIn,
different
Pinterest,
channels,
yeah.
and they don't do any of them well.
Yeah.
And what I've found is that the most successful entrepreneurs that I've seen have been ones who are really just focused on one particular niche. So it's awesome to see that you are really focused. And I see you've got something called an SOS call, which is pretty cool. And this is a 30-minute call where people can actually get in touch with you and say, I'm messing up somewhere. What can I do? Talk to me about some of the experiences you've had with these SOS calls, because I use SOS calls the whole time. So I'm like, I just want this little one thing sorted out. Please, it's worth all the
It's
money. Just
all
sort
of it.
this thing out for me.
Fix it.
Yeah,
Fix
all
it.
of it.
I love an SOS call because generally you either get two types of SOS calls. Ones that are like really like, duh, that's so obvious. Just press here, 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 and it's done.
Yeah.
And personally, those ones are my favorite because it's like, yay, that was like 10 minutes of my time and I got money. Yeah, I love those. But in a way, I also don't discount the people going through that problem because it's not their zone of genius to understand meta. It's mine. Their job is to go and coach. Their job is to go and teach, to be of service, to do all the things to make money in their business. My job is to understand this and be able to identify something so quickly. So I love those kind of calls. The worst one, I'm not going to lie to you, is when they don't know that their account has been blocked or they're not allowed to run ads anymore. And then it gets really, really tricky because for some reason, and the biggest violation I see is people will start to boost post from their personal profile. You know that beautiful blue button? People love to press it like they're gambling. It's the most annoying thing. I wish they would remove that button. And then what they do is they have a violation, right? So they run something and they don't realize it goes against the violations of advertising on Meta. And they carry on and then maybe they forget about it. They don't want to do it anymore. They stop. Now they come to someone like me where I build their ads in Business Manager. We set them up correctly. We've got ad accounts. We've got everything set up. And all of a sudden there's like this red thing that says, you cannot run ads. And to remove that thing, I'm not going to lie to you, it's like such a headache because you need to contact Meta directly. And they are very famous for not being able to contact. So, the only way you can contact them is if you know someone there or you have an account manager, or if your account has that little chat feature. Accounts actually don't, even if you've run ads before. So it makes it very tricky. There are some workarounds that I've done, like create a new ad account or start a whole new business manager, different things you can get around it. But ultimately, people, they don't realize they're hurting themselves by pressing that blue button of death, honestly. That button.
Yeah, the frustration of if you're not working with a company already to run your ads, running and managing your own ads, it's almost a full-time job and a giant pain in the backside. But let's talk about some of your successes maybe. And
sure.
You are focusing specifically on coaches, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
If you can give an example of one or two folks who've come to you and you've seen they've got a great product and they just haven't been able to market themselves properly.
Yeah.
It can be an event, live event. It could be downloading courses. Give me one or two examples of some good case studies that you can showcase to us.
Amazing. So I'll start with my favorite, Christine. She's probably my longest client. We are going on 2 years. Last year, we did our first 6-figure launch, which I was so proud of. The way we achieved that is we did the live launch method. And basically what that is that you have an event, you show up for 7 days, and in that event, you give value, and then you pitch, people join your course. That all in theory sounds like, oh, that's a pretty easy funnel, anybody can do it. But there was a lot of work that happened before we ran that event that I think really contributed to the fact that she was able to have a 6-figure launch. For 6 months, we only did list building. So we only grew her email list with her ideal clients. And we did that in the form of doing a lead magnet. So like, here's something, I give you something kind of vibes. And those people were being nurtured until this launch event. So when it came to the sale, it really became a no-brainer. I know we hear this online all the time. Oh, it's got to be so easy. No, but it was. Because they knew something was coming. They knew who she was. And when she presented, hey, come and sign up, it was like, of course, I was waiting for you to open. Like, please take me. So that's one of my favorites. We are gearing up now. Actually, she's written a book and we are going to work on that launch next year. So that's going to be quite fun and exciting. It's my 3rd book launch that I've done. So wish me luck. Let's see. I think it's going to go well. I've got 2 Amazon bestsellers so far. So I think this one is also going to get there.
Good.
And then my other clients, they also have different goals. I always ask them, what season are they in? I know everybody wants money. Like ROI is important. But some people, for example, like Lynn, she had worked with another agency and those guys really, they were just there for the money. And that alone was just like sending her checks, doing things, and like she wasn't getting anything out of it. The leads that were being brought for her, they weren't opening emails, they weren't moving along. They were just like these random people. So what I do that I also think is very different is I don't just look at ads. Like I said before, the ad is just one component of it. I take a whole holistic approach. So I look at the ads, I look at the emails, I look at the messaging, I look at what the leads are doing after the ads, because that's just as important. Because ultimately, when you do decide to put something that they need to buy, they need to take that action and move forward. So with Lynn, it was really easy to identify that, yes, she had many people coming through and she had great leads, but they were the wrong people. So a quick change in audience actually resulted in her like having better people booking calls and ultimately more people running ads with her. In fact, last month, I actually said to Lynn, like, Lynn, I think you need to stop, which sounds weird because it sounds weird to tell a client, hey, like, please go away now for a little bit. But I said to her, no, I think you need to spend the next 2 months just selling and converting people. And let's come back in January and let's do this again. She's literally in the last month alone closed like 10 people. And I'm extremely proud of her. Like, I think all my clients, they just like, they tend to become my best friends in a weird way because I'm always rooting for them. They're always checking in on me. And I think that creates this healthy bond where it goes beyond just that. Back to my corporate days of when I used to do business development. Like, how can I look at your whole business and make it better? You know?
So this is going to take us to another a tough question now, because
Hit me.
right now you are dealing one-on-one with your customers, which is
Yeah.
great, and you've got control and you can manage your time. What is your vision for 2025? Is it to grow into a corporate behemoth where you've got 100 staff? Is it to keep it nice and small so that you can still maintain this one-on-one engagement with your customers? Talk to me about Carol 2025, 2026.
I love this question because I know the answer to it already. So, 2 years ago, I was in a partnership actually with another lady. She was amazing. And we came to a crossroads and we actually parted ways in our business. We were running the agency at some point together. So we ended in good ways. That's the storyline. So we ended in good ways because we wanted different things. Ultimately, she wanted to grow the business and become what you said, $1 million business. She wanted to have all the people, all the staff, all the everything. And to be honest with you, that has never been my goal. I started my business because I wanted choice and I wanted freedom, but mostly choice. The choice to decide, am I working today? Am I putting pajamas on? Do I have to put makeup on? If I decide to have a tiny human, do I get to go to see them at school? Do I not get to see them at school? I wanted the choice to choose. And by building this huge business, to be honest, I love when people say you can have it all. Yeah, you can have it all, but at a price. And personally, I'm not willing to pay that price. I know what I want, and I've created those boundaries for myself. So 2025 Carol has already, I've had a team that supported me for a while. We have other people in the business. It's not just always me, but client facing, it's usually just always me. That's why those bonds and connections tend to be made. But 2025 Carol is in conversation of sort of, I have someone in mind, someone that we've been looking at. Should we decide to 2025 be the year for Tiny Human to enter the chat? This person will come in as sort of like a manager, so to speak, while I am, I don't know, creating life or whatever it is people do during that period. And then after that, I will re-enter. But for me, it's really important that it stays a smaller boutique kind of experience, because I feel that that's when I can give that white glove service, when I can really give you the most attention. I don't want people to feel like a number. And I think a lot of agencies, unfortunately, they do that. And I don't like that.
Well, a whole bunch of positives there. I'm always pro adding people to the chat. I think as many new Carols on the block would be amazing. So don't take too long to get that process going, because they're amazing. I've got 2 boys and they're just wonderful. So,
as I tell people all the time, we are practicing. We just haven't gotten to that.
No, practicing is important. Practice does make perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. You and I would get on so well. Anyway, so you've got all my catchphrases there. So that's very exciting. And I do like that you've got a vision of how this fits into your life. And I think there are certain customers out there saying that's the kind of person I want versus this large company that's all the processes, everything's automated, but somebody is not seeing me and seeing my problems. So I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
Carol,
Yeah.
if people are interested in working with you or seeing how you can help them build up their lists and their meta competencies,
Sure.
how can they get in touch?
So all the way on all the internet, my name is Carol Kabaale. You can see it on the screen or you can see it down there in the box. I'm sure it's going to be there. And if you felt inclined or like, oh, I'm curious about ads, should I be running ads? Should I do this? I have a great little quiz. It only takes about 2 minutes. It's on my website. Again, it'll be linked down below. And it will tell you if you should be running ads. And if you should be running ads, it will help you identify what kind of ads and if you need support from myself or if you're ready to try it on your own. And if you're not ready to run ads, it will tell you what resources, what areas you need to improve on. So again, I would say take the quiz before you take spaghetti, throw it at the wall and hope it sticks.
So we're slightly different to other podcasts because the links aren't below, they can be above. So you're going to have to do that all over again and say, check out the links above. No, they'll be all over the place. I might actually just put one over here and then one over there and they'll be all over the place. Carol, it's been lovely chatting to you. And
Thank you.
I look forward to chatting to you again soon. And I hope folks get in touch with you and do your quiz.
I hope so too. Thanks, Nick. It's nice being here. I enjoyed it, honestly. So cool.
I really do appreciate your comments. So why not go and watch this live on YouTube or go to my website, kuhne.no. That's KUHNE.no for more information.